Hi everyone, so my name is Amy and I am social media consultant for Tutors and Exams, and I'm here today with the lovely Jane, who is going to talk to us all about the Science Practical CPACs. So Jane, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for everyone.
Hi, I'm Jane Blunt. I've been working for Tutors and Exams for quite a few years now, but for even longer for National Extension College as a distance learning tutor. For Tutors and Exams, I teach physics and chemistry CPACs. I don't do the biology. We have a very, very capable tutor who does that called Lindsay. My background is I started off as a chemist and then I retrained as an engineer in later life. So I'm very, very familiar with the stresses of coming back into education, which for some of you is very relevant. And I have a passion for doing this. I also work for the Open University.
Fantastic, brilliant. So you've got a really great background. So it's really interesting to hear that. So I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to obviously ask a couple of questions and hopefully we can give the candidates a little bit more information about the CPAC. So what are the benefits of running what are the benefits of doing a CPAC qualification?
Well, it's fun. That's the first thing. It's really good to get your hands on the equipment and to get real measurements. It brings everything to life. You develop confidence in doing that as well, which will help you when you go on to university, which many of you are proposing to do. The other thing that it does is it helps you with the actual exam, because one of the papers in the exam is very much focused on the practical activities. And if you've done them, this will give you a head start. And you also learn how to present your results and to draw your graphs and to interpret your graphs in the ways that the exam boards want to see. So again, that maximizes your marks in that area as well.
Okay, brilliant. And just briefly, can you talk us through the structure of a CPAC? So what happens over the 4 days?
Right, well, we start from the starting position for us is that you probably haven't handled any of this equipment before. And that's normal because very few schools run much in the way of practicals before people get to A levels, where they allow the pupils to actually handle the equipment because it's quite expensive and also potentially dangerous. So at A level, it's often the first time that the students are allowed to actually handle the apparatus, to use the equipment, to hook things up and make them work. So we teach you, we show you how the stuff works. We give you any cautions that we need because 1 or 2 of the experiments have a few dangers attached to them. We show you how to make the measurements to make them as accurate as possible. So the first day, we usually talk through what the CPACs mean, what you're going to be assessed on. And I must stress at this point that this is not an examination. You are expected to ask questions. What will happen though, naturally, is that on day 1, there'll be loads of questions, but by day 4, you will be well capable of doing almost everything. And you might just need to check the odd thing with me, but not much. So we will run through what the CPACs are, what your skills are, what you're going to be doing, the experiments we're going to do. And then on that day, we will usually do 1 and possibly 2 experiments. Then on day 2, we will normally do 3 experiments. And then days 3 and 4, we'll do 4, because by then you're really up to speed.
Brilliant. Okay, so really fun packed 4 days then, it sounds like. So prior to obviously getting into the labs and doing the 4 days, is there anything that the candidates can do prior to that that might help or benefit them in any way?
Yes, it's a good idea to look at the core practicals that are suggested for your exam board. But I have to sort of sound a note of caution here, because we normally have a room with people from AQA, Edexcel and OCR in, and each of those exam boards has chosen a slightly different mix of experiments. So the ones we're going to do probably won't be exactly the ones in your textbook, but this doesn't matter because the exam boards, all 3 of them, have signed up to the same criteria for passing, and they are all happy to see people do any mix of experiments you like, as long as it meets those criteria. So come with an open mind on that one. You will be expected to do some homework between the days of the practicals, because there are some things that we can't really do in the lab. We often haven't got access to the internet for everybody, and so it's difficult to ask you to do research in the lab. So we'll ask you to do that. We'll ask you to write risk assessments, and I'll explain on day one what I'm expecting to see in those risk assessments. And those ideally should be done between the days, but obviously if you can't, then you can do those as after the 4 days and write them up later, as long as you actually do those. Citing your sources as well is easier to do when you're either in a hotel room or after you've gone home. So yes, there are some things you can do in advance, and there are also some things that you can do between the days.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So in terms of, the candidates, they've done their 4 days, they've done the practicals. In terms of afterwards and writing these up, like what is expected of the candidates after the 4 days?
Right, well, it's a sort of tidying up operation, because you'll have gathered all the data you need, hopefully. And it'll be a case of filling in anything you didn't have time to do in the lab, like finishing off your graphs, drawing the slopes, doing the calculations, looking up in the literature what the answer should be, because there are some experiments for which there is actually a right answer. So it's after you've done your experiment, you can go and look up on the internet what it should have been and write a little evaluation, shall we say, of what your result is in comparison to that. And just basically to finish off anything you didn't do in the lab. Most students, though, by the end of day 4 have done almost everything they need. So there isn't usually a huge amount to do afterwards.
Okay, brilliant. No, that's great. So in terms of obviously the CPAC qualification as a whole, what would you say most the benefits are of having this, having the qualification?
Well, many universities require it. That's something you need to check with your university. But I think it gives you a better grasp of what science is about, because science is about having theories in your head about how things work, but then testing them out. And the only way you can test those out in many cases is to do experiments. And so it starts you off on that road of thinking what measurements have in the way of backing up our science and our understanding of the world.
Okay, great. I'm going to throw a curveball question in here now. What would you say, personally, your favourite experiment is?
Ooh. I think the clock experiments in chemistry. These are the experiments where you mix everything together. It's actually quite difficult because you have to mix about 6 things together, and there are plenty of ways you can do it wrong. However, you then sit it in a flask and you start a clock, and very, very suddenly it changes color. It's just magic. Whenever you see it, it goes from colorless to blue-black, just like that. And I never cease to be amazed by that one.
Oh, that's brilliant. That sounds like a great one. I'd like to see that in person. So just finally, just before we finish, what would be your piece of advice to candidates who are thinking about doing a science practical?
Come and have a go. It's fun. It really is, you know.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jane. You've been fabulous. I really hope that we've given anyone who's thinking about doing science practicals, or anyone who has been looking at it who wanted a little bit more information, I hope we've managed to solidify some of that for you, and hopefully we'll see you at one of our 5 labs. So we now have 5 locations. So we've got Birmingham, we've got 2 locations in London, we've got Bolton, and we've got Sheffield as well. So hopefully we'll see you at one of those 2. Jane, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me today. It was great having you.
Thank you.